As a small biz pro, I saw we roll, using procurement, program, and control. As a small biz pro, I saw we grow, using procurement, program, and control. I'm a businessman, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. Oh yeah, I'm a businessman, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. Oh yeah, I'm a businessman, yes, I'm an entrepreneur.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Business Zone, a very special edition of the Business Zone with my co-host,
Crystal
and Gilbert Buchanan, your small business paramedic. And today we've got a very, very special guest in our studios with us today, virtually. And he's no other than Mr. Victor Parker, Deputy Associated Administrator for the SBA. This is a man, when small businesses need results, this is the man that they speak to. So, Mr. Victor Parker, without any further ado, we want to introduce you to the Business Zone.
But hold on one second, Gilbert. We want to make sure we know why we're here. So this is a special edition of the Business Zone because this episode will be aired during the Los Angeles Black Business Expo that was established in 1989 and presented hosted by Miss Barbara Lindsay, and she is back now. She's back virtual, so she asked me to reach out to some of our community leaders that are doing things in our community that are making significant change for our small black businesses. And so obviously Mr. Parker here was right there on the top of the list, especially during what's going on where we are here with COVID. So a little bit later in the show, we'll talk about how you can get your tickets for the expo. So that's going to be September 12th, 2020 starts at 9 o'clock, and throughout the event this video and a number of other interviews will be shown. So with that, now we can step it up. We can go to Mr. Victor Parker. Welcome, Victor.
Thank you so much, Crystal and Gilbert. It is good to be with you virtually. It's always good to be back on the show. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So, Mr. Victor Parker, if you don't mind, can you tell our audience a little bit about you, what your purpose, what your function is at the SBA, and why you're there to really help these small businesses throughout this time of COVID-19?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, again, thank you for having me. The SBA, it's been all hands on deck, right? Not only across the country, but right here in Los Angeles. So my role at the SBA is to make sure that all the 68 district offices across the country are providing services to small business constituents. And so what we've been doing is really making sure that not only small businesses have access to the various loan programs that are available during the COVID-19 pandemic, but also our other services. We are so fortunate to have resources with our small business development centers, with our women's business centers, our SCORE chapters, who are all able to pivot. They're able to provide their services virtually, as well as work with other resources, such as our chambers of commerce, various trade associations, our congressional members. It's really been a public-private partnership to make sure that small businesses have access to the various resources that are available during this difficult time.
Excellent. So, Crystal, do you have a question for Mr.
Well, actually, it's just amazing. I mean, because obviously we had no pre-warning in March when everything fell apart in all of our cities. So I commend you guys on all that you've done, because I know you had to rally up, and I know it's coming from the federal government, the payroll protection program, then the economic injury disaster loan. So how did you guys, first of all, what were the programs, and are those programs still active? Is there still funding out there for small businesses? Let's start there.
That's a good place to start. So you're absolutely right. So we had the economic injury disaster loan. So that's through our Office of Disaster Assistance. And those are loans designed to help those small businesses that were impacted by COVID-19. Each state was declared. So we had all 50 states declared at the same time, which we have never experienced before. Usually it's very specific, very regional specific. And this particular occurrence had all 50 states declared all at one time. This is a loan where you can apply directly through the SBA. There is a portal at sba.gov where you would put in your application. It is a fairly short application, but you still need to supply and upload that information. Once you do that, it is processed through our internal SBA Office of Disaster Assistance, and it's designed for working capital. So it's anything from paying your utilities, paying your payroll, obviously. If you have mortgage or rent due for your small business, any of your recurring fixed expenses, you would use the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. That program is still available. We're still accepting applications. There are funding available. And what I really want to encourage folks to do, first and foremost, do not disqualify yourself. So many small businesses in our community, because they are an independent contractor, or because they're a nonprofit organization, or because they don't get a W-2, they automatically assume they don't qualify for these programs. And that is absolutely positively not the case. The CARES Act was designed to make sure that we have finance capital programs available regardless of what type of industry you're working in and what type of business you have. So first and foremost, if you're working and it's a part of your revenue stream and it's your business, own that and come see the SBA or one of our resource partners to make sure that you apply for that Economic Injury Disaster Loan.
Beautiful, beautiful.
The second program I want to touch on really quickly is the Paycheck Protection Program. And that's the one that people heard a lot about in the news. And so we had a couple of rounds of those. It first launched on April 3rd. It was a brand new program. So SBA was actually able, after Congress and the president signed that version of the CARES Act, in about 7 days, we were actually able to stand up a brand new program. This is a program that you must go through an SBA lender. And what we also did was we added additional lenders to make sure that we had access for various small businesses that may not have had traditional relationships with some of our routine SBA lenders. Again, it's used primarily for payroll. However, you can still use it for any of your other fixed expenses as well, in addition to payroll. Again, that's whether it's utilities, paying rent, mortgage, your fixed expenses, all that working capital that you need during this COVID time. The Paycheck Protection Program was designed to do that. The funding for that has stopped, so that cut off August 8th. So we just missed it. We know that there are conversations going on in Congress now. There may be some new version or something else coming up, but for right now, that funding has stopped. However, for those folks that did receive paycheck protection funding, there is the forgiveness portion, which we can talk about a little bit later, but I want to make sure we put that on folks' radar because there is an application process that they will need to do to make sure that that loan is forgiven.
Very good, very good. And while I'm out there, as you know, Victor, I'm a small business coach and I'm also a small business consultant. Crystal and I, we share that type of role with our small businesses. And we meet two types of small businesses out there. We meet the one group that says, hey, we're applying for these funding assistance from the SBA. They're asking us to do credit check. And then you have another group that says, hey, we're applying, and when we do get approved, we're getting much less money than we need. So therefore, we're not really meeting the problem that we have. So then we need to apply for another loan, but the SBA is telling us you can't get another loan if you already have one. So how do you address that for us?
So there's a couple of things. So for the Paycheck Protection Program, that was correct. So there was only one loan associated with the EIN or tax ID number associated with that particular business. And so you could only apply through one lender and only one loan would be issued for that business. However, for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, if you were approved, there is a reconsideration process. So you can actually submit an email back to SBA saying that you need additional funds. one of the things that you must always make sure you do when you're applying for the economic injury disaster loan is make sure you're showing the impact that it had on your business. How did COVID impact your cash flow? What is the working capital you would need to operate your business but for COVID? And so what we find a lot of times is folks don't have the accounting records, the different finance strategies in place to actually demonstrate that economic injury. And that is one of the reasons why many folks may not have received the amount of funding they originally anticipated or the amount of funding that they wanted. And so it's so important to make sure you document what you would need in order to operate your business. And really, we're looking at probably, we started this saying about 6 months of working capital, and that's the minimum. You really want to show what you would need for 6 months of working capital, and now you are short because of COVID, because you've either had to shut down your business or you've obviously had to streamline in so many different ways that now that revenue is far short from that regular 6 months of working capital.
Excellent. That's very good. Thank you so much.
And Victor, we none of us expected. Well, maybe you guys did because you're actually sitting at the table. But none of us. I know I did not expect that here in September we'd still be in a place where businesses are shut down, and so many of those individuals actually submitted those applications and received them early on, like in March, assuming that they were going to be back in business by July, and it's been like a roller coaster. So how are we addressing those individuals that literally have run out of money? The PPP money has run out. Some of them didn't know that they could go for the EIDL. And how do we think that's going to affect us for the near future?
So yeah, that's an excellent point. So once we started to see that, as you indicated, the pandemic wasn't going to be as short-lived as it is in reality, one of the things they did was they extended the amount of time. So as you may recall, originally there was an 8-week period in which folks were able to leverage their PPP funds. So we extended that to 24 weeks, which gave folks a lot more time to use those funds to retain their employees or bring their employees back, because so many businesses had to retool, they had to pivot, they needed time to do that. And depending on where you're located, as you indicated, across the country, some businesses are still, restricted in terms of the amount of customers they can see, where they can open their business, et cetera. We're hoping now and apply for the economic injury disaster loan. Is they use their PPP or the Paycheck Protection Program for payroll, and now are would apply for the economic injury disaster loan, which is not limited to payroll. So you can actually use those funds again for other things other than payroll, and there's not the focus on payroll, which would again provide that working capital for people. The other thing that we're looking at is a lot of our local cities are providing, and even the county government are providing various grants for small businesses. So if you go to visit the LA County, for example, is doing some new programs, and our small business development centers and women's business centers have been provided with additional funding to kind of help you with training our small businesses on where else they can find additional funding to kind of supplement them and bridge them through the recovery process to get them on a little bit more solid ground.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's excellent, because I know, I'm consulting. I do some consulting work for the Urban League, and I've spoken to so many businesses that, obviously we having to help them reinvent themselves and reinvent their business models. But I know there are so many restaurants that are just having to close their doors because they can't sustain themselves on a limited outdoor eating outdoor clientele. So what do you think this looks like? I don't know, 2021. Are we starting all over? What are we, especially for the Black business owner? Because we are already, what is the saying? If the white business world has a cold, we already have like 4-stage pneumonia. So what does that look like? What are you guys thinking that looks like, and how should we move forward?
Right. That's an excellent question, because you're absolutely right. I think our business community has probably been hit much more just because of the industries and market sectors that we're in. If you look at restaurants, if you look at the retail industry, if you look at our professional
Yeah, professional services as well.
Yeah, they've been just because they can't do live. Okay,
Right.
what's happening? Come on, connection.
So I'm thinking that because of those things, we need to probably reassess what we call essential services because,
exactly.
yeah,
And so what I see is the continual pivot and retool. I think there are going to be additional programs that local government, and that's including the state, as well as some of our county and city folks, will be offering to help stimulate our businesses back into what the new norm is going to be. And we're
right,
going to have to continue to figure out how do we readjust ourselves and realign ourselves with this new norm. And it's providing the assistance to help folks retool. That's really what 2021 is going to look like from a recovery standpoint. One of the pilot programs that we are starting is called the Community Advantage Recovery Loan Program. And that is a loan program. We've had Community Advantage, and many of you may have heard of it before, where it's up to $250,000. It's usually for the smaller loans that traditionally would not be done by banks. We usually rely on our CDFIs to provide those loans. And we're piloting that program because I think that's going to be one of the avenues that we're going to have to provide funding to help our small businesses pivot. And that's whether or not they're going to have to convert to an e-commerce platform if you're doing, warehousing and international trade, whether they're going to have to now stream out in terms of having folks working remotely, whether their employees now would have to change the schedule and the number of clients they can see a day. All these different things that we'll have to do, even small manufacturing, where now they'll have to put in certain equipment to protect the health and safety of their employees and their customers, and to meet new guidelines that we're going to have for health and safety regulations. And so all of these are going to be things that we're going to have to not only train people and get folks to think a little bit outside of the box, but it's going to also be a way to help provide them with additional ways that they can pivot and leverage the resources that they have to be much more competitive in the current market that we're going to have in 2021.
and
I completely agree. In fact, I'm launching a class on September 30th on the reinventing your business model, and that's what we're talking about, moving yourself to a online virtual digital platform, and more of us becoming digital entrepreneurs, because that's going to be the direction. But here's a question, and this happened when we were in the recession in 2007. After all this is said and done, everybody's credit score going to be in the toilet. So how are they going to be able to apply for loans and assistance if it's not grants, because they literally are going to be starting all over again?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of credit challenges going forward. And so one of the things, and we did this in round 2 of the Paycheck Protection Program, we really are going to have to rely on our CDFI community. We're going to have to rely on our mission-based lending and our microloan programs that we have to really help rebuild the small business credit infrastructure, if you will, and that ecosystem. Those are the institutions, and when I say CDFIs, for example, Community Development Financial Institution, those are the non-traditional, what I call non-traditional banks. Are not the banks that you see every day on the corner, but those are the folks that really know the pillars of our community. They know that the barbershop, the cleaners that's on the corner, where it's really a local, again, pillar of the community, where they're going to need the help and assistance to start building back into a much more sound business climate and small business climate for all of us. And so that's really where we're going to have to start. It's looking at microloan programs that SBA has and that the city has and a lot of different institutions have, where it's not done through a traditional bank. So there's a little bit more latitude in terms of looking at the impact. Usually the amounts of money are a little bit smaller, so it's a little bit more manageable, and you can take it in smaller chunks to help you, again, build back your business credit. But people can start now. I think the key to that is starting to build solid financial records as to what you're doing now. How did you manage your business during this pandemic? And making sure you're documenting that. Everybody understands that the revenue, there was a decline. And obviously there was, a decline in your expenses, there a decline in all kinds of things, have impacted our business for a variety of different reasons associated with COVID. But being able to demonstrate and tell that story and show how you did pivot and the things adjustments that you made to retool your business is going to be such a critical part of telling that story to whatever financial institution that you're engaged with. And even for your grants, you're really going to be able to demonstrate and show that.
Yeah, record keeping has certainly been a top priority and an amazing thing for small businesses. They really need to be on top of the record keeping their documents in place. Part of what I'm thinking with the SBA or the SBDCs or women-owned centers would be to establish a program or launch a program that would help these small businesses do better record keeping. I think that would help. Now, there is a study that was done by the National Bureau of Economic Research back in April. They said that between February and April of this year, 440,000 black businesses went out of business. 440,000. That's only in 2 months between February and April. Then between April and July, another 150,000 went out of business. So we definitely need to have some programs that will really help to bolster and nurture our small businesses in these economic. They call them economic deserts. So we got to really build these businesses, provide them with business coaches that can really guide their businesses, help them with the record keeping, help them with all types of coaching so they can be successful.
You're absolutely right. The what I'm going to call the traditional way of technical assistance is no more. That's going to have to change, just like the businesses that we're coaching have to change, and SBA is having to do the same thing. We're having to pivot and change the way that we deliver our programs and services. And so that is going to be absolutely key. And that's one of the reasons why the CARES Act provides additional funding to these small business development centers and to the women's business centers and to our SCORE chapter.
Right, definitely. And those are some of the things that Crystal and I have been championing also with these small businesses.
And it's finally it's now they'll be listening to us, because we've been saying that I'm like the resident QuickBooks expert out there for our community, and I've been saying it even when I ran classes. I have to drag people in, I have to coerce them, I have to bribe them, and still they didn't see that they needed it. But one of the very first glaring biggest hole in the world weakness that we saw starting as of March was the fact that they did not have records in order to prove what their revenue was the year before, and they were scrambling. It was just a mess. And so what are some of the something motivational that we can carry into the rebuilding of our community? I know a lot of us are, in addition to this, if COVID wasn't enough with the civil unrest and the civil that has just thrown it into another loop. And so from a black business owner and from the black business community, we're getting it from all sides. So how do we encourage our businesses that not to throw in the towel and not to say, I'm just done with all of this. This just seems like the mountain is too high to climb here.
You're right. I mean, and I'm going to go back to saying what I said before. First and foremost, do not disqualify yourself from these programs and services. Do not make the assumption because you work on the set at a particular show and you're in the entertainment field that you're not eligible for these services. You're not eligible for the technical assistance. You're not eligible for the loans and grants. We've got to stand up and be ready and be prepared. These things that we were working on and that we were getting people prepared for, the expansion of the airport, it's still going to happen. The Olympics, it's still coming.
Yeah.
It may be a little bit delayed. There may be some changes. We still have to continue to get ourselves prepared. These opportunities, I was just in a meeting last week. They were still talking about things that we needed to do for preparing for the Olympics. They were still talking about when Staples Center reopens and some of the different things that we were going to have at a national level with our sports and entertainment industry. So there's so many different ways that we can leverage this. It's about getting prepared. If you look at, as this pandemic evolves, we're in Los Angeles. You all are located in what I call a global center for economic growth. And as other countries are recovering, you're going to see warehousing, all those things that we do associated with our ports, whether it's truck drivers, whether it's actually owning a building and the warehousing that you need to bring in supplies and inventory. Those things are going to start building up. And so now is the time to start preparing. So yes, it's very painful right now. And I certainly understand that. And I hear it every day, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it is so much to look forward to. And now is the time for us to be prepared. Start that preparation now. Start working on making sure you get the certifications you need. Make sure you're registering for various programs that are out there, whether it's with the city or with the county. Make sure you're getting the certifications that you need. You'll be amazed, even though, and this is prime time in the federal government world, because we're coming up on the end of our fiscal year.
Right.
So for those of you that perhaps are registered in the System for Awards Management to do federal contracting, hey, take a look at some of these contracting dollars that are out there right now, because there may be opportunities for you to leverage some of this last minute spending they're doing at the end of the year. But more importantly, start thinking about what they're doing for next year. We're already planning at the government level things that we're going to have to do for FY21. And so regardless of what industry you're in, we've got to do those things. We were just talking this morning, some of the government cars, as an example, have been sitting for a while because most of our employees have been teleworking, and we obviously have not been doing face-to-face site visits. But believe me, these are temporary virtual site visits that we're doing. So guess what? When we go back to work, back to the workplace, those cars have to get serviced. So if you own an auto mechanic shop, if you own, any type of repair, we're going to have to, those things are going to need to get serviced. So there are things coming down the pipeline. I know I wish it should have come yesterday. I completely understand that, but this is our time to shine. This is our time to be prepared and ready. Take advantage of all the different things. Me having to travel a lot, just little things. I was traveling in April still, believe it or not, in DC. And I remember staying at one of the hotels that typically provides breakfast, which they couldn't do. But what they were able to do was find a small business around the corner that brought over little croissant sandwiches for breakfast instead of having the breakfast.
That's amazing.
So you've got to think outside of the box. Start being proactive in building those relationships, because there's going to be definitely an opportunity for us to take advantage of this new norm. And we have the industries right here in Los Angeles that we can do that and make a huge impact on our communities.
And when you mention the ending of the fiscal year and the beginning of the new fiscal year, the new fiscal year starts October 1st, right?
Correct.
That's when it starts. So small businesses need to know that we're now in September. So we only have a few days left to end this fiscal year and start prepping yourself. Start getting your articles in place. Start getting your corporate documents in place, your meeting minutes, because when you go to apply for these certifications, those are some of the documents they're going to ask for. So you want to make sure you have them in place. Make sure you've got your capability statements. Those are things that you're going to need to present to a contracting officer.
That's right.
And that's what Crystal and I are here for, to help them with those things.
Exactly. Victor, so before we end yours, because you segue right into supplier diversity, and our next guest, Ms. Karen Blackwell, I'm sure you know her.
I know Karen.
Right. So Karen's going to come on in a minute.
I'm in good company. I feel good.
Yeah. So she's going to be talking about Prop 16 and the initiative toward that. So it'll be great. You guys can interact with that. But let me ask you before we bring Karen on, when are the forgiveness applications, or has it started yet? Or what is the time frame for that?
Absolutely. So the forgiveness applications are being accepted as we speak. And so there are a couple of different forms depending on, so there's the forgiveness application, there's standard one, and then there's also the EZ form. Do not punish yourself and try to fill these out by yourself. Rely on the small business development centers, rely on our women's business centers. They have the information, they have the advisors that are there to help you. We have worked with so many of our different colleagues across the country, whether it's the chamber, whether there are other organizations that we have also provided information to help you fill out those applications. You have 24 weeks. And so all those applications are going to basically be due in the December timeframe. So and I believe it's December 23rd, I want to say is the date when those are due. But you want to start getting those applications in as soon as you possibly can. But we're here to help.
Okay.
I think that's very good and valuable information there, Crystal. Because
I think so.
Many small businesses, they were talking about forgiveness, but they didn't know when it was due or what they needed to do. So hearing this from Victor directly is really, really good and valuable information.
I say so. And Victor, you'll be back in a minute. So with that, while we're unfreezing Victor, so I'm so sorry. Who knows what goes on in the internet world nowadays with so many people on the internet. So Victor, so we're going to bring in. There he is.
Thank you all so much. I really do appreciate it. And one last thing, I know you didn't ask this, but I really want to stress this, if you don't mind, is watching out for predatory lenders during this time frame and predatory.
Yes.
Please, please, please be sensitive to when you're sending your tax returns, when you're sharing your tax ID number with folks, and even when you're filing your forgiveness application. Make sure you're going to credible folks. If you have any doubt in your mind that the particular lender or the organization that you're working with, please reach out to the SBA district office at lado@sba.gov. That stands for Los Angeles District Office. We can make sure that these are actual legitimate folks that are trying to provide you help before you share that information with them. So often our community is attacked by predatory lenders and predatory service providers that are using different scams to get access to your information. And it's just so critical that we're extra careful in this time frame, at this time in our community, to protect ourselves and protect each other. So please rely on us as a resource. We can help provide you with the right assistance and the right tools for folks that can really help you and protect you. So again, stay safe, everyone. Stay strong. We will get through this. This is the best time that we can unite as a community. Protect yourselves, protect your customers, and protect your families. Thank you so much for having me again.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Victor,
thank you.
Are you going to stay on the call, Victor, or are you going to go?
Yeah, if you want me to stay on the call, I have a few minutes. I can stay if you'd like.
Yeah.
Or I can, whatever works for you all. It's up to you.
Because you and I got to meet after this. So
I'm about to say, I think I have a meeting on my calendar with someone.
That's Gilbert.
so we can include Karen, and then once that is over, then you and I can talk. Okay.
Whatever. If you want to interview Karen and then call me back, whichever one works for you. I'm flexible.
Okay, sounds good. So Crystal, you're gonna let them Karen right now?